There's multiple people that we talk to, right? And determining the water size pipe coming in. And then, we're talking to several other individuals now as to how to put all of this together. Because remember, how do you get hot water? Gas has to feed the water tanks. As you go up in the number of floors, the pressure gets lower and lower. So how are you going to make sure that the people on the third floor have the same amount of pressure on the first and the second? That matters as well. And then what about the hot water? How fast is the hot water going to replenish itself? What size water tank should we have?
Greetings, well builders. Welcome to Get Diversified, your go-to podcast for all things real estate investments.
I'm Jacqueline.
Melvin Landry. We're thrilled to embark on this wealth building journey with you.
Imagine this. What if your investments not only secure your future, but also unlock a life of financial freedom? That's what we're diving into on this show. Apartment buildings, storage facilities, mobile home parks, the whole shebang.
But here's the kicker. It's not just about investing. It's about crafting a legacy, building memories with your loved ones, and seizing every moment. Time is the currency of life. And let's be real, none of us wants to waste.
We've got the insights, experience, and dash of excitement to spice up your investing game. Plus, we'll throw in some real-life stories that'll make you see the potential in every brick and mortar.
Subscribe, buckle up, and get ready to turn your investments into a ticket to financial freedom. Together, we're not just building wealth, we're building a community of savvy investors. Let's get diversified. Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of Get Diversified. So I'm your host, Melvin Landry, and I have my beautiful other half here on the other side. Welcome, dear. And today I want to talk to you about multifamily housing, and in particular, some of the watch outs when you purchase a multifamily property, whether that's large or small. One of the things that you aim to do as part of any purchase is you aim to execute and do as best on the due diligence side of things as you can. As with any purchase, regardless of size, there's always some things that you can't really see under the hood when you're looking to do your overall evaluation. And, we're learning that firsthand as we are, we're multifamily operators. We buy small scale, we buy mid-tier scale, and we even purchase large scale as well, depending on the opportunity at hand. And I want to have a chat today with my other half, speaking to some of the intricacies that we found as a result of purchasing an older multifamily building in our respective market. So, we purchased a 12-unit multifamily dwelling in the Opportunity Zone here in Metropolitan Pittsburgh. And with that, we bought it, I would say nearly 100% vacant. And then with that, we did our due diligence as best that we could. And, but as with anything, right? Every inspection is never perfect. And there's always some gotcha moments as a part of the overall kind of evaluation. And we're learning that firsthand. So, we talk about, examining the multifamily ordeal. So what would you say, dear, is the biggest surprise, right? After we kind of got this building under contract, we acquired it. We asked that we had acquired it in a vacant status. We did that on purpose. We knew there were going to be some potential surprises, regardless on what's disclosed. That's just the nature of the beast in this business. So what would you say was the biggest gotcha in the grand scheme of this 12-unit opportunity that we acquired?
Sure. So let's first talk about what investors most focus on when they're buying a building. You would look at the roofs, you would look at the boiler, you would look at what are you going to do from a unit renovation standpoint. But what some investors overlook is the utility infrastructure that's actually feeding the building.
Yeah.
So hidden utility issues can become a 5 or even 6-figure problem. So let's talk about that a little bit more. So my husband's kind of let me kind of take over this part of the project and really run with it. So the biggest surprise that we found is there was a 3/4 inch water pipe coming into this 12-unit building. So let's just put that into perspective. So our single family house has a 3/4 inch pipe coming into our single family house, and we have 3 people in our household. That was overlooked. We had no clue to actually check what size the water pipe was that was coming into the building. We had some folks come out and tell us what we actually needed to do, and it was a $20,000 expense. So we needed to upgrade the line to a 2-inch water pipe to be able to get the appropriate water pressure for the 12 units in this building. And I'm just going to go into that a little bit more, right? So we had to determine the size of the water pipe. We also then need to determine the size of the water heaters. We need to determine, are the water pipes going up to the second and third floor and going all the way back to the building where there's an additional 2 units, because water pressure and all of that matters in how all of this is run. So, guys, check those things because what we found out is it could be very expensive. So, $20,000 was to get the pipe in. Now we're working on the next phase, which is actually making sure the water pipes are properly sized as you go up to the first, as you go up to the second and third floor, and as you go out to the duplex in the back. So we're still waiting on the quotes to come back on that. But that was probably the biggest surprise that we found.
So why don't you kind of speak to, okay, $20,000 probably going to be more associated costs to it. Are you just dealing with one individual, or are you dealing with a lot of individuals? I mean, you're project manager here. So how much coordination and different individuals did you have to talk to deal with to kind of get to understanding the pipe issue, right? Because had we done nothing, right, we could have kind of carried on as normal with renovations and guaranteed day one you get a tenant in, we would have been getting calls and maintenance requests and consistent yells from the tenant base. Not enough water
Yeah.
pressure, right? Huge issue.
Right.
So you always want to do things right the first time. You want to make sure that you kind of have a game plan, that you're addressing it accordingly, and also it meets up to specification code as well. So, in addition to talking to plumbers and getting some feedback and thoughts and evaluations, who else you had to deal with in the grand scheme of things, leading up to understanding what the range was going to be? You want to share that intel?
Yeah. Yeah, so let's just talk about the water for a second. So there's multiple people that we talk to, right? And determining the water size pipe coming in. And then, we're talking to several other individuals now as to how to put all of this together. Because remember, how do you get hot water? Gas. Gas has to feed the water tanks, which we'll actually talk about in a minute. As you go up in the number of floors, the pressure gets lower and lower. So how are you going to make sure that the people on the third floor have the same amount of pressure on the first and the second, right? So that matters as well. And then what about, the hot water? How fast is the hot water going to replenish itself? What size water tank should we have? Right? Electric versus gas water tanks. Well, learned a lot about that. Didn't really know much coming into this, but electric water tanks have a lot longer of processing
Time
time to
to get
heat the
hot.
water,
Yeah.
right? So one of the things that we noticed right away is I think most of our water tanks will actually be gas, but that we probably have some reason to have some electric. But again, that's all part of the master plan of putting not, getting the pipe in, getting all the water pipes up there, getting the proper amount of pressure. You kind of have to look at the entire picture. So a lot of people are involved. So let's talk about this second point, dear. So I know we kind of talked about this water being a pretty big deal. Well, listen to this. We've talked about this several times. We have one tenant that's getting ready to move in, called the gas company and said, "Hey, can you turn on their gas?" And they said, "We've been waiting to hear from you. You the owner?" And I say, "Yes, I am. Tell me what's going on." So apparently there was a new gas pipe, main gas pipe down this particular borough where we have the property. And the gas pipe was never connected to the building. So while we did our due diligence and saw all the furnaces and saw all the gas pipes that were in each one of the individual units, there was no gas line coming into this 12 unit building. So, step one was let's find somebody that again can build this pipeline into the building. Well, it's not that simple. They started asking me tons and tons of questions. How many BTUs? I'm like, oh my gosh, what are BTUs? Are you going to have a gas stove? Are you going to have a furnace? How many BTUs are your furnace gonna be? Are you gonna use gas water heaters or electric water heaters? And I was like, oh my gosh, this stuff is super complicated. But basically, what has to happen is you need to determine how many BTUs you have going through the entire building. So if you're going to use all gas water heaters, there's a certain BTU associated with that. If you're going to have a furnace versus electric baseboards, uh, obviously there's a BTU for the actual furnaces. Are the furnaces newer? Are they older? Are they, more efficient? Are they less efficient? All of that has to do with determining the BTUs and also needs to be coordinated with the folks that are working on the water pipes
Yeah. Yeah.
because one can't be going left and the other one going right. Because if all of this stuff isn't done correctly, it's not going to work.
Yeah. So, so in addition to kind of speaking to the notion of the BTUs associated with each unit, what type of product we're going to use, whether there's a furnace, whether we're doing baseboard heat, and the type of water tanks, things of that nature. One of the things that we look to evaluate in an overall part of kind of putting the plan together was, when we acquired the building, some units had furnaces, some units had furnaces that were newer, some units did not have furnaces at all. We had one unit that had a furnace in unit with a air conditioner condenser tied to it as well, which for a typical older Pittsburgh metro type house, most most units don't come with AC, a condenser associated to it. So it was a real jigsaw puzzle when we were trying to dissect the needed BTUs to kind of coincide and understand, what's the right plan, what's the right amount of BTUs or, associated to it by unit. So several iterations, and I had to jump in and help support also as well to bring the vendor base together who I've been dealing with for years to ensure unit one is going to get this, unit two is going to get that, unit three is going to get it, you know, furnace and a gas stove and so on and so forth. And it was like putting a jigsaw puzzle together to ensure that we had the right amount of BTUs, and ensuring that the plan was adequate to meet the needs of the building per the business plan, right? Which was renovating the entire building, getting quality tenants in it, and having long term stabilized asset over time. So
So, being a novice to this, no idea. I'm assuming, hey, you have gas in a unit, you run one gas pipe up to the unit, and you have gas to the furnace, and you have gas to the stove. And that was
not
wrong,
quite, not
right?
quite.
You
Yeah.
need to run one gas pipe up to the furnace and another gas pipe up to the stove. So immediately we saw that there's a significant amount of savings if you think about gas pipes per foot, how much they cost, having to go to a second and a third floor. Immediately, we came to the conclusion we do not want any gas stoves, so we can at least save on the second run in the units that we have furnaces. And I think that's going to be a substantial savings that we have. Another thing that, we looked at, which was apparent when I was putting a map together, is all of our furnaces are on one side of the building.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now we had one furnace on the third floor of the other side of the building. So I was like, honey, we cannot run this gas pipe all the way up. It's probably going to cost, upwards of 5 to 7, 8, 9, $10,000 for what on one side of the building. So we're going to make an executive decision to probably make that all electric baseboard heaters. But again, that plays into your electrical load. Do we have enough electrical power to power up everything that we need from lights to sockets to now these electrical baseboards, right? Another thing that needs to be considered when looking at the overall utility.
Yeah, the load, overall load matters. What's going to be carried from the building, which will need to be upgraded also as well, matters for the longevity of the building, as well as ensuring that there's not outages, which could lead to tenant complaints, right? If things are just tripping over and over and over. So understand that evaluation, monitoring the load. And that's the flip side of it, right? While we're kind of balancing what unit will get gas versus what unit will not get gas. We're dealing with plumbers, HVAC individuals, and electrical is a big piece of the puzzle too, and the mechanical hierarchy of the overall building. So again, right, it's a jigsaw puzzle that we're constantly kind of going back and forth with daily, right, to determine what lines are good, what lines are not good, how much load goes into the building, what unit will get X, what unit will get Y, what's optimal for the units, right? And it's not a one size fit all because each of the units are sized different. We have a few one bedrooms, we have a few two bedrooms, we got a four bedroom, right? So it's again, it's putting the puzzle together. But at the end of the day, right, if you kind of follow through, kind of take a step back and understand kind of what are the parameters within the jurisdiction that you're operating, and ideally help to put the plan together accordingly, that makes sense. That can kind of coincide with your business plan, which also coincides with the borough's plan also as well. So it needs to be compliant with a lot of sign offs to ensure that when you're doing the right thing, that you're compliant on all aspects of things, whether that's local, county level, state, etc.
Let's wrap this up a little bit and just give some investors some advice before they buy a multifamily property. So I'd love to at least start off with three, and maybe you could give the last two. So advice to investors out there that are buying multifamily: don't stop at a standard property inspection. That's my
Yeah.
first one. Have licensed plumbers, HVAC, and gas professionals evaluate the building's infrastructure, because again, it's very, very costly. And then my third one would be, verify the water pressure and the proper pipe sizing. So one of the things that I didn't mention is the individual that we bought this from started running all these new water pipes. And I said, hey, that's great. They've already actually started some work. Yes, that's true. But guess what? It's the
Wasn't
wrong
right.
piping size.
Wasn't right. Wasn't
So
right.
we have to rip it all out anyway. So again, understanding, verifying water pressure and piping size is my third piece of advice. So, honey, what are the last two?
Yeah, it goes on the notion, right? Trust but verify. But in this case, we shouldn't have trust and verified anyway, right? Because yeah, it looked good from the exterior surface, but once we got deep down inside, a lot of holes, a lot of issues. And at the end of the day, when you're putting the value in value add, you want to ensure that you're kind of doing the right thing. So I'll say, you know, what some final points, right? Speaking to due diligence, right? So depending on the size of the building, depending on its jurisdiction, inspections can cost hundreds, thousands, in some instances, tens of thousands of dollars, depending on the size of the building and where you're located. So I would say try to look beyond that respective costs. Have the peace of mind and being able to sleep at night when you know what you're dealing with, what you know, what are some of the gotchas and some of the watch outs, and ensure that you kind of have a plan for the worst case scenario versus the best case scenario. And when in doubt, always plan for the worst case scenario, right? So we're seeing this firsthand on our end. I mean, look, there are some things that were not disclosed that now we are the owner, that we are, we are dealing with. So, and when you put that into perspective, we knew we were getting into a pretty heavy lift. We see the other end of it in terms of the projected value, in terms of how we underwrote the property, we accounted for it from a budget standpoint. 9 times out of 10, we're going to go over, but that's okay. I mean, look, it's part of the business. It's part of what we do, and
Part of
uh,
learning.
yeah, learning. That's another thing, right?
I
So,
mean, I've learned tons and tons of stuff that will make me such a better investor when we go buy our next 12 unit or we buy our next 20 unit, with learning all about piping and gas and electric and understanding that layout and really diving into that a little bit more than what we would do for a smaller multifamily or a single family house.
yep. And,
Sure.
when you think about the upside, right? It's the expectation that, once this project is done, fully occupied, I mean, the opportunity will be, you're looking at a projected value of probably upwards of over $1 million at least. So while we have, a little bit of heartache going into it, dealing with headaches in terms of ensuring things are meeting compliant, that's what putting the value and value add is all about. There are going to be some nuances. There are going to be some gotchas. There are going to be some hiccups. That's just part of it. And, how you deal with these setbacks, is kind of how you come out stronger. But it's a good learning experience. So
Yeah, and
I'm
it's good
already,
to,
yeah.
as we're working through this, gosh, how can we go through it? And he's like, "Honey, this is part of what you have to go through. It's part of the risk versus the reward, right? It's part of learning, right? You don't learn unless you do. You don't learn unless you fail and become better every day." So, if somebody were to ask me, Jackie, if you could go back and add one item to every multifamily due diligence checklist, what would that be? This is how I would answer. And this will kind of be our last statement that we have to finalize this episode of the podcast is basically verify the capacity and condition of every single utility entering your building. That includes water, sewer, electric, and gas. Investors spend a lot of time looking at what they can see, and some of the most expensive problems are buried underground or even hidden behind walls. So, all I'm going to leave you with that. Hopefully, we provided some valuable insights to you today on what we learn and continue to learn every day on our real estate journey.
So, folks, on behalf of myself and my other half, thanks for listening to the show. Again, give us a like, subscribe, get Diversified podcast. Over 100 episodes of hitters in the industry. And we talk about everything from real estate to storage to cannabis to trailer parks. We talk about it all. So, on behalf of myself and my other half, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. Peace.
Jacqueline and Melvin, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to listen to this episode of Get Diversified. Please make sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on future episodes. Finally, stop by our website and follow us on social media. Ciao for now. Make it a great day, and we'll see you next time. And remember, get diversified.